Hi, hello to everyone in the Philippines. This is Benj Ariola. I am one of your speakers at MORCon, and basically what I am presenting is the exact same topic I am presenting at PubCon. I wanted to come up with something more custom. I don't like reusing presentations. Although due to a time crunch, I have limited time. I presented this earlier at PubCon. So far, the reception was pretty good. I still have to make another presentation for tomorrow on Universal Search. And aside from that, work still continues. And I still have several client calls that I have to do remotely. And I would also be working remotely in the Vegas office. And basically, I work mainly out of the San Diego office. So, I apologize if the presentation is not really customized for SEO Organization Philippines, but the main lesson here, the main thing here is the lessons you will learn. So definitely what you will have here is still educational. Hopefully everyone learns from it, and let's just go ahead and present it. And normally when I present, I have nice backgrounds, nice light, I dress up well, I stand up, I'm animated, I let the video come in. But this time, I'm just on a time crunch. Let's just do it nice and simple. Camtasia showing the presentation along with the webcam on my face. Hopefully, I look good. Walang muta, walang kulangot, walang ano. Pero, okay, let's see. So, the topic I'm going to talk about, avoiding keyword-focused dilution and linking issues due to dynamic HTML effects. Now, this is somewhat technical in nature, so hopefully you could go ahead and follow along. If not, of course, you could always review this later and play this later, so you could absorb it more. So, when we look at websites, many users like dynamic effects on a website, even from very small things. Scrolling menus, sliding banners, lightbox effects, and stuff like that. All of these dynamic effects, as long as they're used where it enhances the user experience, it makes things easier, then users like it. If they're just added just to be added, as in ginagamit nyo lang pero, pampagulo, it's not really essential to add in. Some designers could be, just excited. Oh, may bagong effect, gamitin ko. That is not ideal to do. You use these effects for a reason, and as long as user experience is in there, then that would be best. If you're gonna look at how Apple works and older devices and iPhone and everything, even the simple maximizing, minimizing, the subtle movements, those are important in the user experience. Even just the growing and shrinking of a menu or an app already tells you that the app originated from that icon. It helps us perceive how technology works, even with these subtleties. So that is one reason why users like dynamic effects. Now, when it's applied on websites, making that experience happen on a website is ideal also for the users because it reminds them of a desktop application, or probably to be more correct in that statement, it also reminds them of phone applications, tablet applications, laptop, mobile applications, and desktop applications. Anything that is offline runs fast. And when you have these dynamic effects running on a website, they get that same experience, and it's what is expected by the user, especially for those that are not that familiar how things work online. They're familiar with things how they work offline, the ones that are technologically challenged. So whenever they see a website that kind of loads slower, some people don't even know why it's loading slowly. They click around, they double click, they reload because they just don't know that they have to wait. So having the fast experience is essential for users. So when we're looking at HTML and how to do all these effects, it's not really just HTML. There's lots of things happening here. Of course, you need images, you need videos. Sometimes you could use Flash technology. There's CSS in there. There's server-side languages like PHP, ASP.NET, JSP. And aside from that, if you're old school, there's also Perl. Some people still use Python. And there's also some Cold Fusion users out there. Another scripting language is also JavaScript. Placeholders of data that you could pass around between applications and platforms is XML and JSON. Now, if you're going to look at all these technologies that build up a website, you could classify them as client-side and server-side. When we talk about client-side, it's really running on your server. And when it's running on your server, it tends to run faster. When we talk about server-side, it runs on the server. Since it runs on the server, you have to pull it, you have to call it. It takes some time, the page has to reload. But the good thing is, anything that has large amounts of data that you need to process, it's ideal to process on the server and not on your computer or the web browser, because now that would be slow. So for small effects, you want that happening on the client side, so you no longer have to fetch it from the server. But for large data crunching, happens on the server. So if you're going to look at it, client-side technologies run fast because it's happening on your own computer. You don't have to fetch it. But large storage of data and processing of data is still server-side. Now, with that in mind, and users want to have that experience of things happening fast on the front end or on the client side, we concentrate more on HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Now, if you want to pull data from the server, we're not really talking about videos. We're talking about all of these server-side languages. And also some databases like MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and more. Now, all of these server-side languages and databases, let's just bundle them up and say server-side scripting and databases. Now, to combine the power of these two, that is where Ajax came in. You have the fast loading of client side, but you have the large processing of data on server side. And Ajax could connect the two. Asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. In fact, the XML there is even optional. You could just run Ajax without XML. Just connect your client-side technology, mainly JavaScript, along with pulling data from the server, but the page does not reload. So the experience feels like it is running faster, but in reality, it just removes the page load experience. So everything is pulled from the server without reloading the page. Now, since Ajax exists and code was reused and used again, people started building frameworks. And when we talk about frameworks, there's so many. Some examples I've written here are jQuery, Prototype, MoveFX, Extension.js, CoolKit, and whatnot. All of these frameworks are just pieces of code that you could use and reuse so that it makes programming easier. Now, all of these popularize many effects because there's ready-built code that you could simply use them. One example, tab navigation. As you could see in this GIF animation in my presentation, when you click on the links, the URL is not changing on the site, but the content is changing. What is really happening is this is very similar if you could design it as tabs, but in this specific example, it's designed as bullet points, but it's exactly the same. Tab navigation, you click within tabs or links within the site, the URL does not change, but your content is changing within a specific area of the site. Another thing that was popularized by all of these effects, accordion navigation. You click on some area, one thing expands, the rest contracts. Click on another link, another thing expands, the rest contracts. And just doing that over and over, you could see how some would expand, some would contract, like an accordion. Okay. Now, aside from that, parallax scrolling. When you click on a certain link or scroll, you could see different layers different layers of your web page move either up, down, side to side, or whatever. In this specific example, some of them are moving in different directions. Now, in parallax scrolling, one thing that made it popular was making them all scroll in the same direction, where some layers are faster, some layers are slower. And it gives you the full sense of depth. It makes it feel like it's in 3D, but in reality, it's not. Now, in parallax scrolling, with all these layers, many have been creating websites wherein a new page view is a new scroll. You scroll down, you scroll to the left, or scroll in whatever direction, and it goes on to the next page. You could either click a link or you could scroll through it by dragging this scroll bar or using your scroll wheel on your mouse or whatever pointing device you're using. Although it's very appealing, users like it. It's intriguing, it's interesting, it sparks your interest. Wants you to even just navigate through the site and be amazed. But there's also some issues because all the content is all on a single page and you're just scrolling through and the URL doesn't change. Now, other things, sliding banner images that slide from side to side. Many websites put this near on the top portion of your site, and sometimes you scroll over different things like your unique selling propositions, different product offerings, news and events, whatever you wish to put in the banners. Some of them are just static images, but in this specific example of the scrolling, there's also other layers that are scrolling in different directions. But either way, any type of scrolling could also cause some type of issues that was popularized by many of these frameworks. Lightbox effects. You know, when you click on certain picture, thumbnail, video, or even piece of content, a new box appears. It's like an overlay on the page. It's not really a new window. It's in the same browser window, but it dims the surrounding and a new box appears. So this has also been popularized by many of these frameworks. Probably the one that is used the most is, or initially used in the beginning for Lightboxes was Lightbox.js. And if I'm not mistaken, this was initially made in Prototype, the JavaScript framework. And from there, you know, that was also used in many ways. Another example, just expandable areas. You know, expandable div. You could click on a piece of link and it just expands a box, and click on it to collapse, and it could go back to a smaller box. This is used often sometimes when you want to hide a piece of content and then you want to display a piece of content. This technique is also used. Now, with all of these effects, depending on who made it, who programmed it, who designed it, they could be doing it in different ways. There are people that could program it wherein it's very focused on the client side only, or it's client side plus server side. Now, imagine if it's client side only, what does that mean? It's running on your web browser, only on your web browser. So whatever content you have that is affected by the effect, tab navigation, different tabs, andun lahat ng content mo. Accordion navigation, some collapse, some expand, andun lahat ng content mo. Parallax scrolling, you scroll through different page views, andun din lahat ng content mo. Pag andun lahat ng content mo, you have multiple topics. You have the whole content of everything in a single page. You are not changing your URL. You have it all on that single page. Now, if you're running something that is client-side plus server-side, not all your content would be on that single page. You could pull in data from the server anytime. And that is and mainly you're using Ajax in that respect. Okay. Now, in these two different techniques, they both have SEO issues and you have to resolve them. Okay. So that is where we're going to talk about each issue, and I'm going to go through 6 issues that comes with all of these effects based on those 2 main premises, if it's all client side or if it's client side plus server side. So first issue, which is an on-page issue. If it's all client side powered, all your content is on a single page. We saw that tab navigation, scrolling, whatever. So in this specific example, you could see that the link highlighted here is blog. That was the link that was clicked on. Now, when you click on articles, the content changes, but the link or the URL is still the same. Okay, in reality, what is happening there, which is displayed on this page where I disabled JavaScript, CSS, and images, if you look at that first part, that is this beginning part. If you look at that articles, that is that second part. Now the rest is also there. It's down below, but for demonstration purposes, I just decided to show these two. These are two different topics on a single page. What is happening here is you are diluting the focus of what the page is all about. Imagine if you had a whole website with tab navigation and the URL never changes and all the content is on a single page. You have all your topics mixed all into one. If you want to rank for your products, your individual products, rank for some of your services, rank for your About Us page or what, all of them are all into a single page. It makes it more difficult to rank for it because your page is not really focused on a specific keyword area. They need to be on individual URLs. So that is one reason why this is not ideal. If it's purely client-side and all your content is there, then you're diluting the focus of what the page is all about. Okay, so one tip that I could give you if you want to look at your pages with JavaScript disabled, CSS disabled, images disabled, you could use the web developer toolbar. Just search for it. It's made by Chris Pidrick. You should be able to find that. Or you could simply use Google Cache. You could simply use the cache search command query on Google and then add your URL and then click on text only, and you should kind of see the same effect where you're viewing the site without JavaScript, CSS, and images. So what is the solution here? Now there are some SEOs na sinasabi wag niyong gawin. Some SEOs, just because they don't have any other reason, they say don't do it. And I personally know some people like this, you know, bato-bato sa langit, wala, batuhin nyo din. Bato-bato sa langit, tamaan, wag magagalit. Basically, I find it quite annoying sometimes when some SEOs say to SEO clients, "Oh, this site is powered by this type of effect using JavaScript and CSS and whatnot," and then sasabihin na lang, "Ay, pangit gawin yan, wag niyong gawin. Hindi yan magra-rank ng maayos. Don't do it, blah blah blah." Pagkatapos nagagalit naman yung client. Bakit naman hindi? Kasi it is a good user experience. Users do like it. It makes people happy. So just saying don't do it is sometimes not the best solution out there. There is a reason why these effects are in place. It actually helps some users. So your SEO advice should not be dependent on that alone. And one of my advice is using Ajax. When you use Ajax, you could just keep the main content for the designated URL be the one that is loaded as plain HTML, not in Ajax. But when you click on any of the effects, let's say it's a tab navigation, accordion, scrolling nav, or whatever, those will be loaded by Ajax. Okay? But the single piece of content for that designated URL is the one that is readable for search engines. So every topic has its own designated page. It has its own default content that is in plain HTML, but when you click on the links, the URL does not change, and those would be loaded by Ajax. It may not sound clear right now. It may still be confusing, but in the end, I'll show you an example, and probably it would clear things up. But as for now, just remember, all content on the same page, not good. It causes dilution of your content, and aside from that, if you do separate them, you could still use Ajax to load the other pieces of content and maintain the user experience. Another solution is to use the hashbang. A hashbang is the hash symbol or the number sign, pound sign, sharp sign, whatever you want to call it, followed by an exclamation point, and you could add a parameter after it and use it in the URL. Now, why is this a solution? Because this is what Google specifically mentioned. It would trigger their what they call their headless browser. And a headless browser is a browser, as a web browser without a user interface. What it means is Googlebot is going to crawl your site pretending to be a web browser. So it's going to download the site first, render it how a web browser would, and then Googlebot would look at the content from that point. Why I don't like this? First is Google seems, by experience, still seems to be inconsistently running the headless browser. It doesn't still seem to find every content that is Ajax powered or JavaScript powered. And another thing is only Google has the headless browser. Yahoo Bing doesn't have it. So I'm not a fan of the hashbang technique. So my preferred solution is actually using Ajax. It's more compliant to other search engines and it's more consistent in Google. Just by using Ajax is not a solution. Remember, you have to do it correctly. The default content should be in plain HTML for the designated URL. Now, here's the second issue. Not all content could be seen by search engines. So if it's client-side and server-side, obviously you're using Ajax. If you overdo it and all your content is in Ajax, then nothing could be seen. What you see in that GIF animation is, the changing some parameters on that page changes the content. Some are disappearing, some are appearing, and that is basically a listing of resorts. And as you scroll, the price ranges and all these different parameters, the results are changing. If you look at the source code, it's predominantly script tags. Script. There's almost no content there. No content could be seen by search engines at all. So, and I was talking about this earlier, use Ajax to solve the issue of putting all your content in different places. And in this example, it's already using Ajax, but the problem is no content could be seen at all. So if all your content is Ajax powered, then nothing could be read at all. That is what we want to avoid. So what is the solution? Again, I hate the solution. Don't do this. Just because it's all powered by Ajax, you don't tell a client, don't use Ajax. There is a way how to make Ajax SEO friendly. So when you are using Ajax, the designated content for the designated URL should load as plain HTML and not use Ajax. Only when you have some other effects, that's when it will use Ajax. So the main thing here is each URL has its own HTML default content. Then the rest could be loaded by Ajax. Okay? So issue number 3, which is more of an off-page issue. Links that cannot be crawled. Whenever you're using different types of effects, sometimes links are not coded properly. The href value would have various signs here. See here, you could see the pound symbol, JavaScript void, or JavaScript and some JavaScript function, and all of these are not ideal. There's no URL that search engines are crawling, but you're using it that way because you want to trigger some type of JavaScript event. Now, what is ideal is you have a specific URL where the href value goes to, but your onClick function has a return false, and the return false specifically tells the web browser to not load the URL in the href. But in the eyes of search engines, it's going to disregard that onClick line and it's going to look more at the URL. So what's happening here is the Ajax effects for users is still there, but the URL is the one that is crawled by search engines and it should have the corresponding content. Now, your link should always have a valid URL and the href value. That is the main lesson on this point. Issue number 4. Links cannot be seen. Well, and usually that happens because the link is loaded by Ajax. If all your content is loaded by Ajax, then the links in it could not be seen at all. So the solution here is the same as the solution to issue 2 that was mentioned earlier, which is content could not be seen. And how to fix that is the default content for the designated URL should be as plain HTML. So that is the same solution for here. Issue number 5, incorrect URLs that users were linked to. Okay, since in many effects, accordion, parallax, tab navigation, sliders, you could click on things where the content changes, but the URL does not change. Now, when people want to link to that page, they copy and paste the URL. And if the URL did not change, they could be linking to the wrong piece of content. So example, I'm looking at a page and I saw products page. And I went to the home page and the URL is the home page. I click on products and then the URL did not change, but I'm now looking at the products page. And then, kunwari, ang product is bisikleta. Kinopy and paste ko yung URL. Pero yung homepage URL na nakopy ko kasi hindi naman nagbago ang URL. Then, pinaste ko sa isang forum tungkol sa mga nagbabike. Tapos sinabi ko, oy, tingnan nyo to. Bala kong bilhin ng bisikletang to. Ano, tingin nyo, maganda ba? And then, binisita ng mga kaibigan mo, yung mga nasa forum. Nung binisita nila, wala silang nakitang bike. Kasi napunta sa homepage. Eh, store, ano pala yun? Outdoor store. Hindi lang bike ang binibenta. So hindi nila nakita. Homepage ang nakita nila. So, when people are linking to you, and it's powered by Ajax and the URL does not change, people could be linking to the wrong URL. Again, anong solution? I wouldn't say don't do this. You could fix it. Link to the hashbang URL? Puede, but that's not really that search engine friendly. I'm not a fan of it. And my solution there is to use the push state method. The push state method is something more for newer browsers. And what you could do in the push state method is you could change the URL even if the page does not reload. So when people copy and paste that URL, it would be going to the right piece of content. And when you use the push state method, it also solves the problem of the back button, forward button, and even the reload button. So just to make sure that the right piece of content is loading. The push state alone is not the solution. If you use push state and that's it, it does not fix every issue, because even if you could change the URL in the browser, the content could still be not present. So you have to fix issues 1 and 2, as I mentioned earlier. Okay. Issue number 6, tracking issue. Since the page is not reloading, only things are moving around, expanding, collapsing, hiding, displaying, sometimes web analytics is not fired. Okay, and when you do web analytics, you want to know what users are actually doing, what content and what pages they're actually seeing. And if it's not running properly, then you're going to have errors in your tracking. The solution is to use event tracking in virtual page views. Basically, when it is a virtual page view, if there's a large piece of content where the experience looks like it's a new page, I suggest using virtual page views. Use event tracking if it's just a small effect, like an overlay, open something, close something. I would make you use your best judgment of when you think it is an event and when would it be best to use a page view. Okay? Now, if you're not using Google Analytics, you're using Omniture, Adobe Marketing, whatever they call it now, Core Metrics, which is now owned by IBM. They also have a different name for it today. There's Web Trends and all other web analytics platforms. If you're using a different platform, then you have to learn how to implement event tracking and virtual page views on that specific platform. As a tip for Google Analytics, check Analytics IQ under resources in the help section. They have a good video on event tracking and virtual page views. That is a good jumpstart for you to understand these two concepts right away. Now, I gave all those 6 issues and I gave the solutions. It may not be easy to understand right away. So I have a working example. It was my plan to come up with multiple examples like parallax scrolling, multiple tabs and show how it's fixed. Pero kapos na rin sa oras, considering work and everything, I was thinking of showing specific clients, their websites, how they implemented our recommendation. Pero hindi pa kami nakakapaalam sa mga client. Normally, the bigger the client, you have to ask permission if you're going to use their website in a presentation. And hindi pa kami nakapaalam. I made the presentation last minute. So I'm just going to use an old example that I've used for many years. And this is Ajax Optimize. Okay, within this example, you could see the page. And I click on products, I'm clicking on services, contact, about. Pay attention to the URL. The URL is not changing. So clearly it is powered by Ajax. Now, if I right click on the home and I open it on a new tab, I right click on product and I open it on a new tab, that is copying, it's like almost copying and pasting the href value. Now, if you look at the home page, it's still the home page. If you look at the products page, it has its own URL. Okay, and it specifically displays as the default content the products. If I right click on services and open up services, it has its own services URL, and the default copy is the services page. Okay, now from the services page, I'm going to click on other links. Pay attention to the content and the URL. The content is changing, but the URL is not. And the default content for here is services. I'm now on the products page. Pay attention to the links I'm clicking on. The content is changing, but the URL is not. And the default content for this page is products. And the same is true for the home page. The URL is not changing, content is changing. If I look at the source code of the services, you will see within the source code that the copy is specifically for services. Now, when you look at the products page, even if the content has already changed, let's say I click on services, the content already says services, but I am on the products URL. If I view the source code, the content is still for products. The content does not change within the source code. It only changes here, which is pulled in by Ajax. So what Google sees is the default content, which is in plain HTML. What users see is what you click on, which are the dynamic effects. Now, let's say I do a cite command on this, just to see how Google is actually seeing this. And in the cite command, you could see that all URLs are indexed. So the site is totally crawlable. And you could see here under the products, it does see the products. Under the services, it does see the services. Okay. So in a nutshell, what is happening here, the content, the default content is what search engines see. The default links is also what search engines crawl. And the Ajax effects come in whenever you click on something. So going back to the presentation, and to summarize everything, users love dynamic content. So as an SEO, it's not always the solution to say don't do it, because it has some purpose. Users do like it. This dynamic content gave rise to web development techniques like Ajax, and these techniques are used in many frameworks and increase the popularity of several effects. And where using these effects, this could cause some issues. It's either diluting the content, or the content could not be read at all, or the links are not crawlable, or the links could not be seen at all, or users could be linking to the wrong URLs. Now, as the solutions, use Ajax properly, you should have one default content that is for the designated URLs with its own links that are crawlable, and the Ajax effects are the ones that are not read by search engines. Link to your sites properly, make sure that the links are readable and they're crawlable, and share properly. Use the push state method so that you could change the URL when people copy and paste it, they're going to the right URL. And that basically ends my presentation. I'm Benj Ariola, Internet Marketing Inc. I usually give out all these, social media links, how you could link to me, and it was visible throughout the whole presentation. But aside from that, I also have the About Me account so that it's just one easy way to remember, and it has links to all my social sites there. If you have a question, tweet me. Um, Officially, whatever presentation that comes from PubCon should stay at PubCon, and PubCon should distribute it themselves. So uh, don't share this basically. Don't share this and don't say that it's a presentation that was used for MORCon. And this is a presentation that I'm just repurposing, but I didn't have the time to create a new and special one. But I also don't want to disappoint you. So, ayun lang. Tapos na ang presentation ko. That's it. And hopefully you learned something. It might be over the head of some because it's too technical in nature. Um, but the more you learn it, the better you would be. Okay, thank you.